This is my Hoya obscura and it needs a repotting urgently, and I'm going to show you how to repot a Hoya. The roots are actually growing above the soil, which is no good for the plant because these roots are susceptible from drying out very quickly. Also, if I pull the plant out of its pot, the roots are actually growing through the actual drainage holes, and that means that this plant is completely root bound. And I can tell also when I pull it out the pot that there's not enough soil, there's no space for the roots to grow, so it needs an urgent repotting. The soil mixture I'm using consists of equal parts of potting mix, orchid mix, perlite, horticulture charcoal, and also orchid bark. So it's 20% of each ingredient, and you know what? You don't have to be exact. It's not like baking where you have to have the ingredients at the exact measurements. For repotting a Hoya, you can just completely estimate, and that's probably why I'm not very good at baking. When it comes to the pot I'm using is a plastic pot, but it does have drainage holes in it, and the pot size is just 2 sizes above the original pot. So the current pot that this Hoya is in is a 12-centimeter pot. I'm using a 15-centimeter pot. Definitely don't want to go more than 2 pot sizes up, because if it's too large, the pot, it means that there's too much soil and the plant won't use enough water in the soil to actually dry out the soil, which means that the Hoya is going to sit into a soggy potting mix for a long time, which makes it susceptible to root rot. So maximum is 2 pot sizes above the current pot. Now, when it comes to removing the soil out of the roots, there's 2 ways of doing it. I tend to just put on gloves and just pull away the soil, loosen it all up. I'm not really gentle with my Hoya roots because Hoyas are pretty tough plants, and the roots, don't worry if you lose a few, it doesn't matter. It will still survive. If you want a more gentle way, what you can do is get a bucket of water, pop the actual plant in the water, and then remove the soil from the roots that way. It's more likely that more of the old soil will be removed if you put in the bucket of water, but I'm too lazy. I can't be bothered doing it that way. I'm just going to remove the pots just manually. Once that's done, I pop a little hole into my new pot, and then I pop the mother plant into the pot and then backfill it. I make sure that the actual roots are completely underneath the soil. Also, while I'm doing that, I'm tapping it down to make sure that to try and get rid of any air pockets in the soil. Definitely don't want any air pockets in the soil, because if there's air pockets, it means that those areas are areas where the actual Hoya cannot gain nutrients, cannot gain water in those areas. So definitely want to make sure that getting rid of all the air pockets. I also use a chopping stick, or if you don't have a chopping stick, you can also use any sort of type of stick and just go around the pot to try and remove more of the air pockets. I also tap the actual pot to actually help with remove the air pockets as well. Now, I'm not going to water this Hoya because I actually pre-moistened the soil beforehand, and this is also a good way to try and reduce any particles going into the air, because you definitely don't want to breathe soil particles that can fly in the air, especially perlite, because perlite's not very good for the lungs if you breathe it in. Once that's done, the Hoya is going to be a lot more happier, so I'm going to pop it now in the area where it receives a lot of bright light, and I tend to pop it in the area where it will receive indirect sunlight direct sunlight in the morning, but indirect sunlight in the afternoon. For myself, I just find with my Hoyas that if I pop it into direct afternoon sunlight, the leaves tend to burn, but it can cope with morning direct sunlight. Once that's done, I make sure that the soil is completely dry before I re-water the Hoya again, and continue it that way. I will fertilize it once a month, especially in the growing season where it's more like spring and summer, where it's growing more leaves, and that's when I fertilize it. And that's how to repot a Hoya. If you have any questions of your own on how to repot a Hoya, just leave it in the comment section down below and I'll get back to you. If you have any tips of your own that you'd like to share, then please leave a comment down below, and that'd be fantastic to share all our knowledge in this community. If you like this content, hit the likes button, subscribe to the channel so I know what sort of content that you do enjoy watching, and I'll create more of those. Now, if you want to know on how to propagate a Hoya, watch this video right here.